Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. Bugsy Malone's downstairs. About to take her out. Before I do, I want to drop you another top story from the world of Tottenham Hotspur. If you enjoyed this content, please smash the like button, hit the subscribe if you haven't already, hit the notification bell, and drop your comments. Let me know your thoughts on today's topic. So we've got obviously the Morgan Gibbs-White deal that's in jeopardy in the last hour or so. Increasing confidence, as I said that this in the previous video, that this story is just a little bit of ruffled feathers and a little bit of shenanigans, if you like, and frustrations on behalf of Marinakis and saltiness, probably. But all of the reports are suggesting right now that that Daniel Levy and Tottenham Hotspur will secure this deal, and that it might be delayed, but there's no real jeopardy, according to people like Matt Law, according to loads of different aggregators that are out there and journalists that are pushing around the story, saying it's still likely to happen. So Morgan Gibbs-White at this stage, despite the delay, despite the potential legal ramifications, despite all of these potential kind of nuisances that are going on, well, Tottenham Hotspur are still likely to complete the signing. I've got three other stories for you guys, and I'm going to ramble through them quickly so as not to take too much of your time. Graham Bailey of the TBR and Jamie Brown, who do a great job bring us news, views, and clues for me to share with you. Well, they have released this article this morning talking about our midfield pursuit. So you know that Tottenham Hotspur, after the Morgan Gibbs-White deal that was done yesterday, they all were saying it's not done. We're not finished yet. We're still apparently interested in Johan Visser. £50 million is the asking price. I don't expect it at anything like that level. Apparently, Nottingham Forest have put in a bid with Brentford that has been rejected. Nothing like the £50 million that they want for the guy. It will be interesting to see whether or not the Nottingham Forest move for Johan Visser and Tottenham and this kind of awkwardness that's going on between Marinakis and Levy, maybe that will sort of ruffle some feathers in this potential deal. Tottenham are very much interested, but the story was out yesterday, or this morning rather, that apparently whilst he's still very much of interest to Tottenham Hotspur, that at the moment there has been no official bids or any kind of official conversations, that Tottenham actually haven't spoken to them, to Brentford, in the last 10 days or so. And then since then, we've obviously had these other two stories that have emerged. We've got with regards Kudus and Morgan Gibbs-White that went from nowhere to done very, very quickly. And so it remains to be seen whether they're still interested in that department. I would love to see a Johan Visser come in at the right price point, a sort of £30 million, £25 million for a guy that scored 19 Premier League goals without any of them being penalties. The guy does have pedigree. The guy does have talent, and I think he would be a brilliant kind of combination, a double act to throw in there amongst the variables and the different options that Tottenham can put together. As I said to you on a different video, I think I said it on the live stream last night as well, when you look at what we have now that's emerging in all the different pockets at the top end of the pitch, if you can throw a Johan Visser in there that you know you're going to get goals from, that is Prem proven, then you just have combinations that you can approach football with, which makes it very difficult for opposition teams to plan for any kind of predictable version of Spurs. As I said in the past, under Conte, it was all too predictable. Under Ange, for the most part, it was all too predictable. Unpredictability is the second best ability after all. And every time that a team that you're facing is thinking about what version of Tottenham are going to be seen against us, well, if you've got 85 different iterations of the forward line, then that opposition club can't spend any more than a few minutes or a few days or a few hours or whatever sort of practicing against how to defend or how to approach against any one version. And that's why it's so important to have variety and versatility in your offering. We will park the Johan Visser story until it emerges or until it goes into more detail. At the moment, it looks like Nottingham Forest are more interested in him than Tottenham are, but we shall see how all of these stories with regards Morgan Gibbs-White is going to kind of mix in and upset the apple cart. Of course, Nottingham Forest also looking at James McAtee as their replacement for Morgan Gibbs-White. But we'll carry on because we have heard yesterday that Tottenham are pivoting towards midfield options now. And this is where the TBR football comes in. So TBR football understands, guys, that... Where's my story? Here we go. That Douglas Luiz would love to sign for Tottenham Hotspur, and Fabio Paratici is aware of his desire to return to the Premier League. As TBR Football exclusively revealed last week, Tottenham held talks with Luiz over a potential transfer, with the Lily Whites also interested in the midfielder. The midfielder is just one of several options the Lily Whites are now considering. A holding midfielder and a number 6 are the new priorities after securing deals for both Kudus and Morgan Gibbs-White. Now, stories out last night were suggesting that Tottenham are looking at a 6 and possibly a left back or something else in that regard. But on top of that, maybe throw in another kid to be able to mix it in and mix it up with our options. I see Morgan Gibbs-White, whilst I think of him as a 10, I think we all do, he plays the most minutes in that regard. I do think that there's a lot of substance to the notion that he is a better fit as an 8. As I said in the previous video, his grit, his graft, his determination, his feistiness as a value, as a contributing factor, I think is something that would be a really good strong stranglehold in the 8 role and get stuck in. His ability to pass the ball is second to none. When he wants to, he does overcomplicate things at times. And if you stick him in that 10, where we already have, at least in the second half of next season, when the other 2 guys get back in Udogie and Maddison, I do think you then have maybe too many chefs. And on top of that, I also think that sometimes his shooting can be a little bit awry and he doesn't necessarily convert enough of his chances. And so when you look at the stats and compare them to other attacking midfielders and wingers, they're really not that impressive. When you look at his stats in an 8 guys, then I think that they are a lot more attractive and a lot more sort of combative and comparable to the sorts of attack-leaning 8 that we might be looking for to compete and contend with Bentancur and possibly Berghvall, knowing for what it's worth that Bentancur is still struggling to come to terms and to agree to the new terms of his new contract. We shall see about that. Let's carry on with this story, though. Douglas Luiz is just one of several options. We're looking for Mohamed Kudus and Morgan Gibbs-White alternatives. Juventus have permitted him to find a new club, and his entourage are talking to various teams about a transfer away from Turin. Luiz has been called outstanding, has plenty of interest in the Premier League, with a return to the English top flight is his preferred destination. Douglas Luiz and João Palhinha are among the midfield options Tottenham Hotspur are currently assessing, according to sources that told Graham Bailey, chief correspondent at TBR. Palhinha was also offered to several Premier League clubs, as TBR revealed last month, and Spurs are considering him as an option. The 30-year-old's move to Bayern Munich hasn't quite gone to plan, and the German club are open to letting him leave this summer. The Portuguese international has interest from Fulham and West Ham. Meanwhile, Arsenal and United have previously expressed an interest. Passing accuracy of both of them is sensational. João Palhinha is not the sort of guy that you're going to lean into for creative aspects, for ball playing. He can progress the ball quite well, but really he's just that enforcer that can sit. Now, picture a world where you do have Morgan Gibbs-White possibly playing as an advanced player with Kudus and with someone like James Maddison or Udogie in there as well. And if you had that sort of 3 guys all at the top end at the same time, quite narrow, with a Solanke or a Visser ahead of them, or picture a situation where you had Kudus a little bit further afield, or a Tel or a Sonny off the left-hand side, you're going to need those 2 guys on the fullbacks in a Udogie or a Jed Spence or a Pedro Porro, or maybe let's sort of dream world here at Anthony Robinson, where they can absolutely bomb down the sides. In that vein, in that vision of football, that would just be one iteration of how we could play. You would need a João Palhinha to sit in the 6 to protect. You would, because you'd have so much aggressive, attractive football at the top end of the pitch with that DNA of getting forward primarily as their kind of go-to source of inspiration, that you would need someone like a Palhinha who's just going to sit in the 6 and protect and sort of, and then just offlay the ball to someone like a Gibbs-White, someone like a Berghvall, someone like a Bentancur to do more with it, spray it out wide, or give it to one of the fullbacks that can do a cheeky 1-2 and triangle their way up the pitch. For me, I would still love a Palhinha at 25 to 30 million pound. I think it makes a hell of a lot of sense. I would love a Douglas Luiz, although he doesn't do the 6 role the same way that João Palhinha does. He's more of a box-to-box. And again, the viability of Douglas Luiz, for me, comes down to wages and asking price, which I don't think will be too much of a problem. Why it is that he is sort of surplus to requirements at Juve doesn't, just because people are no longer wanted, doesn't mean that their value isn't there. Bentancur and Kulusevski came from Paratici's Juventus time, and they've been proven to be very, very, very successful acquisitions for Tottenham. I've got no problem with it at all, and I love the fact that Paratici's out there figuring things out. Don't forget, of course, Dusan Vlahovic might be the alternative option for Johan Visser. There's so much to be excited about. If Morgan Gibbs-White does end up happening, then I think that the one below here, the next story, I mean, I don't know what we're dealing with in money. We have got a story I'm going to be bringing to you in just a second regarding naming rights deals as well. But I think Adam Wharton would be 70, 80 million quid. But if you could get him on top of it, then of course Tottenham are cooking. And then we're starting to go into the realms of £200 million having been already spent. and maybe even more than that, 220. And then if you still want to go and get a Johan Vista and you still want to get an Anthony Robinson, it would be just the biggest sort of transfer window that we've ever had, which will be super exciting. But of course, it's unlikely, isn't it? Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. But for me, of those two, Douglas Luiz and Palhinha, I think that I'd probably rather see someone like João Palhinha come in, if I'm entirely honest. As much as I love Douglas Luiz, I just think that Douglas Luiz is quite similar to some of the other players that we have, that I don't necessarily think they have that 6 DNA. And if we're going to invoke and inculcate some sort of methodology in the aforementioned style that I just said as one iteration, there's others as well where there's just a lot of attacking players on the pitch. I do think that one of those double pivots would be just a useful squad member at 30, 31 years old. You know, he's not going to be necessarily sort of commanding all the minutes all of the time, but versatility and variety is the spice of life. But if you can bring him in, I think that would be sensational. By the way, if Tottenham do go for Douglas Luiz, more than happy. I absolutely love this guy. I know you all do too. Let me know in the comment section. Tottenham keeping tabs on Adam Wharton's situation. TBR can also reveal that Tottenham are keeping tabs on Adam Wharton at Palace. Should the 21-year-old become available, Spurs could well look to make a move for the youngster who has been excellent in South London. Any deal for Wharton would be very tricky as he is so highly rated at Selhurst Park and has a contract there until the summer of 29. Elsewhere, Monaco's Lamine Camara, AC Milan target Arden Jashari, and Hugo Larsson from Frankfurt are midfielders Spurs scouts have issued glowing reports on in recent months. We've spoken about all of, I'm not sure I've spoken too much about Lamine Camara. Certainly, we'll do a scout report on him for you guys in a world where that story heats up. We've done loads about Arden Jashari, and Hugo Larsson for me is a top baller that's going to be a name you'll be very familiar with over the coming years. We'd be more than happy with either of those two, but I think Arden Jashari is probably going to go to AC Milan and join up with Samuel Ricci, who's just joined them from Torino, another player that I absolutely adore. So we'll park that one for now because that's for a different story. Just quickly on this one here, I don't know if you've seen Spurs admin on Instagram and Twitter and everything. They have done a little video of these two shaking hands and making up. I'm talking about Kudus and Micky van der Ven. It's always very interesting and nice to see. It's a little bit weird, a little bit sickening, the video, but it's also quite cool and quite funny and sweet at the same time. So we shall see with regards to Adam Wharton. But listen, if you can get Adam Wharton for £75 million, absolute dream world signing, right? Love the guy, 21, English, homegrown, plays for England, like yada, yada, yada. The kind of superlatives could go on forever. He's perfect. He would be a perfect player for what Tottenham need. And if you can get that done, fair enough. Even if the Morgan Gibbs-White thing does become problematic and we have to walk away, similar to how Chelsea had to walk away from Michael Elise in 2023, he ended up at Bayern Munich. If that frees up the money to go and pay Adam Wharton's employers a number that they can't refuse, and don't forget, Crystal Palace have just sort of changed their ownership. John Textor's left, and they got the new guy who's come in, Woody Johnson, New York Jets guy, who paid 190 million for 40%, valuing the company at about 400 million. Crystal Palace no longer going to be playing in Europa League next season, according to reports. Does he want to go? Is he having his head turned? Is 70 million at 3.5 times a return on investment in just 2 years really not a bad bit of business for them at all? They might then turn around and go and get someone like a Hayden Hackney, who could be the next Adam Wharton. In fact, a lot of people think that he's better than Adam Wharton at the same age, at the same time, in the same league. So it'll be interesting to see what would happen there. I'd be surprised if we could get it done, especially if the Morgan Gibbs-White deal is done. I think that when it comes to money and making logical sense here, throwing in a £25 million bid for a Douglas Luiz or a João Palhinha makes more sense, especially with the Paratici connection and the fact that Yves Bissouma is wanted in the other direction. We shall see, guys. We shall see. Now, I've got another story for you here that I can't bring up, unfortunately, for one reason or another. I can't show it to you. But I do want to just bring it to your attention. Matt Law. We know Matt Law, right? He's been in the mud a little bit, quite a lot this year. And but I've been suggesting that he's been wrong a long time about his takes on Tottenham's finances. Well, he put out an article for the Telegraph that's basically talking about the potential for a stadium naming rights deal. Now, when this news broke yesterday that investment is there, my immediate thought, and I brought it to your attention on last night's show, the noise that's out there is that Tottenham has signed a £300 million sponsorship deal, and we've got some injection of capital from the owners as well. Not sure how that looks and when that will be disclosed. But when you think about the amount of cash that Tottenham Hotspur have had in the bank at the last set of accounts. I think it was 79 million, which was low for them historically, but still the highest in the league. Matt Law was sort of using that and going on this kind of, we've got to sell to buy, there's no money, the cash pot is drastically low. And obviously, he doubled down on that recently on the last word on Spurs. I've been consistent on this channel that I don't believe it, never did. I've always thought that there was, I've said it to you for 7 months since December, that things were happening at Tottenham behind the scenes, and that when Daniel Levy came out and said what he said at the start of the window, and Vinay co-signed it, there was no chance that there wasn't things happening. You wouldn't do that if you were cash strapped. You would just egg on your face immediately. Obviously, in the last few days, we're starting to see the merits of that momentum, and hopefully there's more to come. But if there is truth to the fact that we have got a monster sponsorship deal, either from the Middle East, or from America, what does that look like? Well, I said that's either 300 million quid, if that's the argument, or that's the kind of notion. 250 to 300 million is what's being touted as the sponsorship deal. Well, to me, that looks like a naming rights deal, a 10-year naming rights deal for 25 million a year or 30 million a year. That makes the most sense. And funnily enough, Matt Law, for the first time in a while, we're on the same page. He's talking about this. I'm going to call it a state. I can't bring it up, but I'm going to call it out for you. He says, having already committed to spending 115 million on new signings in Kudus and Gibbs-White, Tottenham remain in the market for a midfielder and possibly another forward. There will be sales with midfielder Yves Bissouma, expected to be one high-profile casualty of the new era under Thomas Frank. But Tottenham's early moves have prompted claims that investment into the club is incoming. Well-placed sources have told Telegraph Sport that Spurs are working towards clinching a lucrative naming rights deal for the stadium 6 years since its opening, with others adamant that funds, either from owners, ENIC, or outside investment, will be pumped into the club. It's unclear whether an agreement over stadium naming rights is close, and Tottenham declined to comment on commercial matters when contacted by Telegraph Sport. Spurs, though, denied talks have been held with NVIDIA. NVIDIA, for those of you who don't know, I think the biggest company in the world, $3.5 trillion in valuation. They are the guys that make all of the chips for all of the devices that you use, all of the super devices, the Apples, the phones, the supercomputers, quantum computers, yada, yada, yada. Anything that requires chips, NVIDIA are in it and have had an absolutely insane share price growth over the last sort of 10, 15 years. Biggest company in the world currently, I think, and absolutely, Jensen Huang, I think his name is the CEO of that company. Obviously, multiple billionaire many times over, and these guys are just sort of very much involved in politics in the world as well. Because, not to get off the topic here, but there's always combative forces. These guys have got chips that are just far more powerful than anything that Intel can produce, or any of the other companies out there that are doing their own versions of it. So to me, it doesn't really make a hell of a lot of sense to think of NVIDIA as a stadium sponsor. When you're trying to think of stadium sponsors, to me, you're looking for brands that have global reach, that don't necessarily have a very sort of small, isolated audience that would benefit, where the company would benefit from the brand exposure. Think about airlines, like global reach and business to consumer facing. Pharmaceutical companies, for example, Bayer Leverkusen, although Bayer is the big pharmaceutical company, they also are the family that kind of created that city. There's loads and loads of examples. Cryptocurrencies would be a good fit. NVIDIA are a chip, but it's not necessarily a consumer-facing company unless you're someone that's into gaming or into crypto mining or those sorts of things, where you need to know what chips are the ones that are running the potential devices that you're buying, because they might be important for performances and things. To the average person, NVIDIA is probably not that much of a logical fit. And so is there a logical benefit in the brand exposure to the consumer when I'm not sure. I mean, you could make an argument. It's a bit of a grey one. It's definitely not a completely stupid idea. But in terms of, does it make that much sense? The same sort of logic that like a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi or like I say, an airline or an oil, like a petrol company, those sorts of things, where everybody around the world is going to, be familiar with the name and be attracted to that kind of that brand as a consequence of hearing it when you come to the stadium, either through, or when you see it on the stadium name, either through computer games or Beyonce or Formula One or rugby or football or whatever else. And so if you're looking for logical kind of fits, Google would be one, Amazon would be one, those just global consumer brands, essentially. And I'm not sure NVIDIA does. But so, back to the story. It's unclear whether an agreement, They have denied that talks have been held with Nvidia, the world's most valuable company, after the AI and technology business declined to comment on claims they were interested in investing in the London club. Transfers, Tottenham have already clinched the £55 million signing of Kudus from West Ham this week, and there remains confidence they will complete a £60 million deal for Gibbs White. Obviously, this was written before that particular... it's just come out now. Sorry. For Gibbs White from Nottingham Forest, despite a delay amid an accusation of making an illegal approach. Shortly after opening the stadium, Chairman Daniel Levy had hoped to secure a naming rights package worth as much as £25 million a year for 15 years, which would have earned the club a world record £375 million, but he has been unable to find a company willing to match the valuation. It's unknown whether Levy has dropped that price or found a buyer willing to meet his valuation for naming rights, but sources believe progress on the issue has been made despite Tottenham's decision not to comment on the matter. The belief from outside Tottenham is that the club must be in line for some investment, either from owners, ENIC, or an external source, given the scale of summer changes and the signings of Kudus and Gibbs White. It has been claimed that the decision to appoint Chief Executive Vinay Venkatesham, together with the decision of Executive Director Donna Cullen to step down, was driven by ENIC and plans for investment. Telegraph Sport reported that investment on or player sales would be crucial to Tottenham's summer, given the situation laid bare in the last set of accounts. Here we go. Here's the scrambling to be right. According to Tottenham's latest accounts, the club's net transfer debt, money owed to Spurs minus money they are still to pay out, was £280 million. Again, that's not uncommon. It might be a little bit abnormally high, but it's not uncommon. If you're a team that buys players, you're going and you don't sell very well, you're going to have money owed out for players. This is not rocket science. And if that was the basis of his Tottenham are strapped for cash thing, then that's what I said for the last 7 months. I just don't agree with him on it at all. And that when you factor in the fact that there's definitely things happening in the background, any kind of any meltdowns that were happening about all of this were short-lived and short-sighted. ENIC provided £122.1 million in owner funding since 2001 takeover to June 2024, the equivalent of just £5.3 million per season. The majority of that came from 97 million share in 22, which had initially been announced as being worth up to 150 million. It then goes on to talk about other clubs in comparison to that. So, look, Matt Law, I think, sort of doubling down a little bit, but also scratching around trying to find a reason to be right when I think he's been wholly written off as wrong. But it'd be interesting. I think that maybe a naming rights deal is possibly likely here, or a sort of 8 to 10% investment if it's £300 million at the same time as Daniel Lee, as the owners Lewis and that are apparently also having put in circa £150 million in new ownership funding. Tottenham clearly are making waves, doing business, and like I say, if we can figure out a way to get the Gibbs White deal done, and then also go after someone like an Adam Wharton, where we've got the six, you've got a wonderfully improved front line that I believe has got enough talent without any more additions to it. I really do think it's great, but if obviously I'm not going to turn my nose up to a better striker. If we can move Richalison on, if we can move Sonny on, if we can move Solomon on, Bissouma looks likely to go, then the last sort of area for concern for me, other than maybe a forward, if that was to happen, we'll see with the Vissa deal, we'll see with the Dusan Vlahovic deal, we shall see, is to go to the back end. And on that note, really quickly, it looks like Romero has turned down a contract offer for an extension to his current deal that runs until 2027. But at the same time, all other reports are suggesting that Atletico Madrid have walked away from Christian Romero in the short term, and that Real Madrid are looking at Ibrahim Konate rather than Christian Romero, as he only has 1 year left on his contract, and Liverpool have sent them the price. I'm not sure what that is. So in that world, if Romero's staying, Tottenham centre-back issues look really strong. I think we've got centre-back options look really strong. I think we've got no reason to really panic there. The last part of the puzzle for me then would be to go and get a fourth fullback. Now, we've seen the noise about Kyle Walker-Peters coming back. He looks like he might be going to Turkey, believe it or not. I spoke about this before. And the other story out there is that Tottenham are looking at Anthony Robinson. I'm not getting greedy here. I don't expect everyone. Rome wasn't built in a day, so to speak. But if Tottenham can get a deal for an Anthony Robinson and an Adam Wharton over the line, and Morgan Gibbs-White and Kudus comes in alongside Tel and Danzo, I think that at that point, with Kota Takai coming in as well and Oliver Bose, I think that at that point, Tottenham Hotspur fans should surely be writing this window down as the best ever. Obviously, we need to get a few players out, make some room to move in the squad. And look, if there's also just any last chance to get a striker in as well, then no fans can complain. And it will be a really exciting rest of the summer where we can talk about all of the possible sort of permutations of what we can do. Wonderful stuff. Love to see some investment news. Love to think that maybe we're going to get some money coming in, some different sort of eyes on the prize, different levels of ambition at the sort of table potentially. If the investment isn't about sponsorship, but it is about an actual stake in the club, which is the other alternative here. Either way, the idea that we haven't got money coming in is obviously silly because the cash deposits would never have allowed us to be able to do what we've done and trigger a release fee. Time will tell with Morgan Gibbs White. I'll keep you updated as soon as I see something. But for now, guys, that's it. Please like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, bye-bye.